This is an ODB Films production. Visit odbfilms.com today.
In Latin, Renovo means to renew, restore, or revive. This show's all about growing in our understanding and practice of faith. Past episodes are available wherever you like to listen to podcasts. I'm Doug Tuke, the Vice President of Ministry Advancement at ODB Films. And I just read an amazing book, and I'm super excited about it, and that's why we're doing our show today on St. Peter's Bones. So good. I was at a meeting at our Sunday Visitor in Huntsville, Indiana with my dear friends, Joe and Jason. And we asked them, what's the best-selling book you've ever had? And they said, this one. It's called The Fisherman's Tomb, and you should all read it. It's extraordinary. It's a amazing telling of how St. Peter's bones were discovered. And it's way more descriptive than what this podcast is going to do. In fact, there's entire themes that are more descriptive than what we can get to on this show. But in the context of the book and how good it is, I decided to throw this together so that it would maybe whet your appetite to check out this amazing book. But first, we got to talk about Vatican City and the library. You want to understand St. Peter's Bones, you got to get in there first. So the original lands that the Vatican City occupies today was also the site of Roman Emperor Nero's circus. So the obelisk in the center of the Vatican Square, the only remnant of the original circus, was originally part of Heliopolis, an ancient Egyptian city, which stood in the vicinity of present-day Cairo, but it was taken by Roman Emperor Caligula and then erected close to where it stands today. So the site of the circus, Nero has the notorious reputation of being the place where a lot of Christians were martyred. And it's also believed that St. Peter was crucified upside down here specifically. That's why Vatican City is where it is, just so you know. So the library was really not anything until the 1400s. So in 1451, Pope Nicholas V conceives this idea, a library, quote, for the common convenience of the learned. And then the Vatican Library was born. Nicholas's collection numbered about 1,160 books. By 1475, Pope Sixtus IV brings the library really to life. He installs the books in a restored suite of rooms. He builds up the collection, and then he names Bartolomeo Platina as the Vatican's first formal librarian. 1470 to 1525, during the High Renaissance, the library grew a ton. By 1481, a handwritten catalog by Platina showed 3,500 entries, and as from its inception, the collection were available without restriction regarding the reader's religious or other views. It was an open library. 1517, Protestant Reformation begins, and that's in the midst of that High Renaissance, but there's obviously a shift of the credibility or value that's given to the Vatican as a resource for information. 1570 to 1610 is the Counter-Reformation. The library inevitably suffered from the introduction of the Index of Banned Books in 1558, which we did a show on. Check that out. It's a big deal. And then some other limitations on access were actually imposed. 1623, most of the holdings of the Palatine Library in the Protestant stronghold of Heidelberg actually become part of the Vatican Library collection as like war booty from the Protestants and Catholics fighting each other. By the mid-1600s, the library again welcomes like unfettered scholarly pursuit. Everyone's welcome, including Protestants and whoever. Come on out, use it as a place for research. And it acquired tons of new stuff, new manuscripts, new books, most notably just like a spectacular assortment of stuff from other countries, from distant lands, okay? 1785, Pope Pius VI strictly limits the consultation of manuscripts, prompting the Spanish priest, Juan Andres, to accuse the Pope of overseeing a cemetery of books, not a library. So Pius the Sixth really limits access. 1883, Pope Leo XIII formally declares the library absolutely, completely open to all qualified researchers. Come on, come read, come do this. 1927 and 1939, the Library of Congress and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace help modernize the Vatican Library's book catalog system. All the way up to 1992, Vatican Library holdings number almost 2 million printed books and serials, 75,000 Latin, Greek, Arabic, Hebrew, Persian, Ethiopian, Syriac, and other manuscripts from the 2nd century AD, 65,000 units of archival volumes in 23 deposits, or what are called fondi, 100,000 prints, engravings, maps, drawings, 330,000 Greek, Roman, and papal coins, and medals. Unbelievable. 2 million printed books. That's incredible. So there are 2 million cards in the card catalog, and every year, about 6,000 new volumes are added. About 25% are purchased. The rest are donations. The staff number is about 80 people in 5 departments: manuscripts and archival collections, printed books and drawings, accessions and cataloging, the coin collection, restoration, and photography. So use of the Vatican Library is restricted to scholars with a letter of introduction from their university or institution describing the project that they're working on. Okay, back to the story. Back to St. Peter. This is so amazing. So in 1941, as bombs are falling all over London, German tanks were rolling into Russia, and most of continental Europe was under the Nazi flag or its allies. One of the most epic archaeological quests in history happened. It started in the center of the chaos. Deep under St. Peter's Basilica, workers began the search for the bones of the first pope who, according to our tradition, the Catholic tradition, had been martyred and buried there. And it all started with an accident. So in 1939, some workers were excavating the floor in the grottos beneath St. Peter's altar in order to make room for a chapel, where the recently deceased Pope Pius XI had asked to be buried. And suddenly the floor breaks through, revealing this ancient Roman mortuary with these striking murals of wildlife and the tomb of a young Christian woman that was all hidden and unseen for more than a millennium. So when he was told about the discovery, Pope Pius XII had to make a decision. Church tradition holds that the first pope was martyred and buried in Rome. So proceeding with the excavation could verify that tradition, which is a big deal. But the flip side was that failing to find the remains would be very unsettling, right? Given Rome's status as the seat of the papacy, or as the author John O'Neill explains in the book, The Fisherman's Tomb, that we talked about, which tells this amazing story. I mean, in way more detail, okay? So Pius XII took what most outsiders kind of view as a total gamble because of his quote-unquote unwavering faith that Peter was there. Amazing. And this account that I'm going to give you is based on the book. You got to read the book, though, because, I mean, it really describes the wit and the will of Pius XII. It's unbelievable. So the excavation commenced with one big clue as to where St. Peter might be. One of the Vatican's library treasures, the 1,500-year-old Book of the Popes, described in detail where St. Peter's bones rested within a bronze sarcophagus enclosed in marble and surrounded with other treasure. It was a monument known as the Trophy of Gaius that supposedly marked the spot. So that's what they had to go on. That's what these archaeologists had to go on. So the excavation was a massive undertaking, requiring the construction of special pillars to hold up the basilica, as you can imagine, and the rest of the Vatican buildings that were all above it. And what O'Neill, the author, describes as, quote, one of the largest and heaviest structures on earth. So that's what they're under. Now, under the Pope's orders, this is amazing. The work was to be done in strict secrecy, so the use of power tools was prohibited. All of this depended on the financial backing provided by a Texas oil man and devout Catholic named George Strake, who contributed only on the condition of anonymity. Nobody could know where the money comes from. Isn't that amazing? So no power tools. We're talking shovels and picks. The money comes from an oil tycoon in Texas. Again, read the book because it's a brilliant description of him and his incredible legacy. They go to work, right? As the workers dug their way deeper into the history of the necropolis underneath the Vatican, they were, as O'Neill puts it, traveling back in time. So as the dirt was cleared away, the world of ancient Rome came alive. I mean, this is like The Source. It's like a Robert Michener novel where like each layer tells another story. Unbelievable, right? Just unbelievable. So 200 years worth of pagan family tombs were uncovered, along with numerous statues and murals of the hero Hercules and the god Pluto. And so far, the excavators had only come across one reference to Peter, a painting of Christ and Peter, along with an inscription invoking the apostles' prayers. Then the team led by Vatican priest and archaeologist Antonia Ferrua, had a breakthrough. And just so you know, Ferrua is not a good guy. There's a lot more to that story. He's a bit of a jerk. But anyway, we'll get back to that. They chanced upon another underground tomb splashed in Christian images of the resurrected Christ, the Good Shepherd and Jonah and the whale. So they were encouraged by their findings, but the team pressed forward. They just kind of kept digging. And as they burrowed deeper into history, they passed through one altar that had been built in the Renaissance and two others dating to the time of the Crusades. They also came upon two walls, the Red Wall from the time of Marcus Aurelius in 160, and another known as the Graffiti Wall dating to 250. So the latter would later prove super crucial to their quest, but for the time being, the excavation just moved right on. They just kept on going. Okay, so finally, in 1942, excavators found what they thought was that trophy of Gaius that they had discovered in the Book of Popes. Although there was no magnificent sarcophagus or enclosure, they did find bones in a small opening in the Red Wall. So the Pope's personal doctor examined the remains and declared them to be from a 65-year-old man. So the world would not know of this discovery until 7 years later, when an Italian journalist actually broke the story. But in a way, the search for St. Peter's bones was actually just starting. It was just really getting started. This is an amazing story. It just keeps on going. So first, the Vatican had to ensure that Rome was spared the devastation that leveled all these other European cities. World War II, right? The Americans held off on bombing and mounting other attacks on Rome thanks to a ton of diplomatic efforts of 3 Vatican priests. Their story's amazing. Monsignor Giovanni Montini, Walter Carroll, and Joseph McGough. I don't know how to say this. Mcgeough. So the first was to become the future Pope Pius VI. That's cool. And the latter two were actually American-born. They are heroes. Their story is amazing. Again, read the book. So the Vatican was also able to get the retreating Germans to actually refrain from flattening Rome as they withdrew. So they're just consumed with all these diplomatic issues while this discovery is going on. So Rome survives World War II, and so did St. Peter's alleged bones until news of the discovery became public in 1949. So 1 year later, a noted Italian archaeologist, Margherita Guarducci, and she's the hero of the story. She's amazing. She was invited to inspect the excavated necropolis beneath the Vatican. She found that the team had not adhered to really any basic archaeological procedures, according to the author O'Neill, and she informs Pope Pius XII, who put her in charge of the project. Okay, side note, because I read the book, I don't want to spoil it for you, but listen, Guarducci was devastated. I mean, she said, so all these people that they had hired to do the digging with no tools are total amateurs. They're just hammering their way through all the digging. No brushes, no small hand tools. I mean, picks and shovels, just bulldozing through it. And there was total devastation. Nothing was cataloged. Nothing was photographed. It was just like a mess. And Guarducci is a pro. And she goes in there. She's just aghast. She's like, I can't believe how bad this is. And that's what led to her tension with Father Ferrua. And Ferrua kind of gets all arrogant about it. Like, oh, who are you to tell me? You don't know what you're talking about. Even though she's like way more educated, brilliant, knows exactly what she's talking about. So Ferrua and her start this nasty conflict from that point forward. That's not as pertinent to the podcast, but oh my gosh, it's a huge part of the book. So you got to read the book. Among her first tasks, she was deciphering this kind of jumble of inscriptions that were on the graffiti wall that had been previously totally ignored. They just kind of bowled through it, remember? So among the letters were deeply symbolic Christian symbols like P for Peter, R for resurrection, T for the cross. And then Guarducci found a giant clue, an inscription that read, "Near Peter." And next to it was one she had glimpsed earlier, "Peter is within." So a medical anthropologist subsequently examined the bones that initially had been assumed to be those of St. Peter and determined that the finding was false. That's not him. He then verified the authenticity of the second finding. In 1965, the Vatican published a report by Guarducci disclosing the new finding. But Ferrua, Guarducci's predecessor, launched this massive disinformation campaign challenging the authenticity of Guarducci's work, Gross, right? And after the death of Pius VI in 1978, Garducci lost one of her key allies in the Vatican, so she was just like going to get annihilated academically. But from his position as rector of the Pontifical Institute for Christian Archaeology, Ferrua was able to marginalize Garducci, remove the bones from the graffiti wall, and basically just sweep her discovery, the real discovery, under the carpet, right? As a result, the truth about St. Peter's bones remained totally clouded in controversy for decades. Ferrua literally was launching this like the equivalent of a media campaign of like newspaper articles and academic papers debunking her as an academic. And she was just kind of a quiet, beautiful, brilliant teacher that just kind of took it on the cheek. Also a very devoted Catholic. She just kind of took it on the cheek. Finally, Pope Benedict XVI ordered a review of the matter, which was concluded under Pope Francis. And the review reaffirmed Garducci's conclusions. And on December 5th, all the way in 2013, Pope Francis had the bones restored to their former resting place. Isn't that unbelievable? So scholars agree that this is it. This is St. Peter. They found all kinds of bones that Ferrua like claimed to be the saint, and sometimes they were animal bones. I mean, like it was just Ferrua was just out of his mind. And Garducci, this beautiful, brilliant linguistic master, quietly just went down there every day and brushed away secrets and studied and created a matrix for learning the ancient languages. And she's the one who discovered in a simple wall, the graffiti wall, the actual bones of St. Peter. The story is amazing. It's amazing, right? So it's him. This is him. Scholars agree. This is a man of the age considered to be St. Peter with scars that affirm what an upside down crucifixion would have done to the bone structure. And they know that also because that was not unique to Peter. That's a really important part of the book too, is that it's actually known that was not an uncommon way to be crucified. It was a mockery actually of the Christians that was done fairly regularly in Nero's circus. Isn't that unbelievable? And then I love how Christians at the time sort of revered the site and very simply kept alive the memory that this is actually where Peter resides. Amazing stuff. So all kinds of history comes to life in this incredible story, and you really should read the book, The Fisherman's Tomb. It's a fun listen to. I actually listened to it on audio, and then I got it physically and read it. It was fantastic. I was so thankful for it. But you guys, make sure you check it out, and make sure when you go to Rome and you visit the Vatican, you know that's really him. That's the deal. Also, oh my gosh, how much is actually going on underground, most of which you can get access to. Those tours still take place. You just gotta apply for them online, and it's a little bit hard to make it happen, but you can do it. You can go down there and you can see the graffiti wall, the red wall. You can see all of that amazing history and the work that took place to create it. So thank you, Pope Pius, for the believing. Thank you, Paul VI, for all of that advocacy. And then, of course, Benedict XVI. And then Pope Francis for saying, all right, let's put this controversy to rest. What is truth? And then also to protect Garducci's legacy. I mean, she's an amazing hero of the church and a true academic genius. I love it. Thanks for listening. Sincerely, we are partners in the journey of faith. I hope you will share the Renovo podcast with friends and foes. Send your topic suggestions, questions, and or comments to doug@odbfilms.com. And always remember to engage the tradition and live the conversion. Until next time, God bless.